that New York cares about America. We hear so many times that nobody cares. It's so refreshing to hear your conservative values about something as simple as a balanced budget. I'd like
Thank
to
you
thank
so
the
much.
gentlelady.
I appreciate it. I yield back.
I'd like to yield some time to my dear friend Doug LaMalfa from California's 1st Congressional District, a member of the Ag Committee and the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, another state that we always assume that nobody cares about fiscal responsibility in America. Congressman.
Well, my good friend, Mr. Hearn from Oklahoma, I appreciate your strong effort of helping shepherd our budget concept through the RSC and get back to fiscal responsibility and be sure it's on the front burner. I'm also pleased to follow my good colleague from New York as too, because California and New York, you throw in Illinois, you don't really see a whole lot of conversation coming out of that you want the country to emulate as far as fiscal responsibility. So it's, I hope that's a bit of a breath of fresh air. But, you know, we're looking at the situation we're in right now as a country. It's just unbelievable in this last 15, 16, 18 months, just how far it's turned upside down. You know, we can't blame it all on COVID. We have to look at the policies that have been put in place. Now, yes, we did spend a lot of money in Washington, D.C. on the COVID era problems. Some of it's justified. Some of it is completely out of control. There's still COVID dollars sitting in little pots somewhere that people are envying and wanting to turn into things that are completely unrelated and just make it slush fund type stuff. And that's not right, because this is the American people's dollars. This is American people's debt. And unfortunately, we're just adding debt to it. We don't really have a sustained income to back up the money we've been borrowing from the future on this. And so when you couple that with the inflation that we're dealing with now, when we're looking at interest rates that are edging up in order to basically try and essentially put the brakes on government spending, that's what's driven this. The higher numbers for interest rates, for payments on American debt is going to devour our ability to budget on things we actually do want to do and care about around here. If the interest rates and interest payments are so high, we can't do the elective part of our national budgeting. That's going to be horrendous for the American people. And you know, Mr. Hearn, when we're looking at the overall inflation picture with the numbers we were talking about earlier, 8.6%, we know it's a lot higher. I can echo what Mr. Barr was saying a while ago, is that my farmers, I'm a farmer myself in my real life, you know, we're not seeing a mere 8% on fertilizer, on diesel, on parts, on tires, on service calls, on everything. It's a much higher number than that. And so if we're going to continue, my family, we grow rice, been doing it for nearly 100 years, that my colleagues, my neighbors have been doing the same thing. How are we going to afford to be able to put food on the table for the American people that's affordable? And I just don't see that. You know, with what you're dealing with in Oklahoma on energy, I just, it's, you know, your energy helps us. And if you can't get at it, you know, we need refineries.
40% of the economy in Oklahoma, and the Biden administration and the Democrats have made, it's very well known. The president has said time and time again, he said it just in the last week, that the high gas prices in America and Americans are suffering is part of the grand transition plan off of fossil fuels onto electric vehicles and others. And yet, when you ask in polling and you ask the young Americans today where they think electricity comes from, the response is the wall. Yes. Not knowing how electricity is actually generated at our generation plants around the country, and the fact that our grid can't even supply what they're proposing to quickly convert our country to and destroy economies throughout our nation. And it's really a tragedy to see what's happening.
It's fascinating you would say that. You know, you plug it into the wall. I just saw a recent interview with a major figure with a major car manufacturer introducing and talking about their electric vehicles. And they were questioned at that press conference, so, you know, where's the power coming from to charge this electric car? Like, well, from that building right over there. Well, okay, it's a building, but it's not a generation plant. Well, I don't really know. And so other person in the group answered and said, Well, this is powered by a source that's about 90% coal driven. Coal. And I'm not against coal. I think coal's great. It's powered our country for many, many decades and been extremely important and shouldn't just be phased out. It's still at least 35%. But the naivety of a major manufacturer not understanding that the electricity has to come from somewhere and it's going to have to be somewhat reasonably priced in order to make it somehow work to this big dream they have of electrifying everything. You know, it's unbelievable what the people are going to face. As you know, Mr. Hearn mentioned, President Biden called it the incredible transition. Well, the people I know, the regular folks, they haven't been asked about if they want to transition on their electric vehicles or an electric stove or anything else. They want to just stick with where they have, because you're looking at the price of electric vehicles are $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. They keep seeing where the price is bumping up and they're having to recall them because things aren't working quite right. We're force feeding something just because government can mandate and pass a law that, hey, we're just going to require that you do it. Well, the market and technology doesn't always keep up with the whims of a dream that somebody would have in a bureaucracy. So, you know, phase them in, but we're looking at an issue that's being force-fed in the Biden plan to have an incredible transition. It's incredibly painful to the American public. That's why the direction that the RSC budget is trying to go to achieve finally balance. You know, if we're going to service more and more debt at a higher interest rate, and we keep adding the numbers, as my colleague from New York was talking about, if the Biden plan calls for $73 trillion of increased spending over what we're already doing at a deficit over the next 10 years, we got big trouble. And government doesn't always do that well with a dollar spent. In the hands of the American people, they're going to make the best decisions for their families on, do they want to upgrade their car? Do they need to add a room to their house for an expanded family? You know, redo their garage, redo their roof. Maybe even think about taking a vacation if they can afford the $7 gas in California to run an RV and go see Yellowstone or something. It's amazing how this place continues to think that the massive spending is going to somehow, deficit spending is going to benefit the economy. It doesn't work that way. Inflation drives higher prices to the end users, driven by government spending. We have to get it under control. So Mr. Hearn's work is really stellar on trying to put this out there. And this should really be a nonpartisan issue. Republicans, Democrats. The blueprint for this would be back in the mid-90s when we achieved balanced budgets, I believe was 4 years in a row, with President Clinton coming to the table and working with Gingrich and Senator Dole and others on actually passing 4 balanced budgets in a row, you know. And that's credit everybody can take for having a strong economy at the time. I think it would still be a legacy of the Reagan and Bush years where we put things back on track of having an income that they benefited from in that context. So, you know, Mr. Hearn, I mean, what do you see as far as that blueprint of balancing back then as something we can emulate here?
Well, I had the very great fortune of being introduced to politics by the late Senator Tom Coburn. And when he was running for Senate in 2004, he had quickly gained the title of Dr. No, because he was always pushing for responsible spending. He wasn't against spending. He said we just should pay for it. He wasn't against helping people. He said we just pay for it, like you do at home, like you do in your business,